New beginnings. That was a general theme. I was born in Lima, Peru. Like my friend Lewis here, we've got a similar story. Does that sound all right?
I'm not Lewis.
And this guy, when he was a child, he went over to Australia with his family, and when he went to America, and I went to Australia with my family. And that's where the similarity ends. And just thinking about new beginnings now, I guess my first real new beginning after Australia was when I left Australia for the first time. Having been brought up in an international environment as a bilingual kid and all that sort of thing, I found Australia just a little bit boring because it was so far away from anything else. And if you've ever met any Australians traveling around, has anybody met any Australians apart from me here, like traveling? You probably know that they just travel forever. Like they're away from home for 6 months, 2 years, working in London and stuff. And I thought, I've got to have a piece of that. So I left without any money, and I went to Paris with a friend, thinking, we're going to have a great party time, going to Italy and Greece, and that was my first time out of Australia. And I don't really know what I was looking for, but I was looking for something like everybody else. And yeah, I had the time of my life, and it really was a great new beginning. You guys living in here in Germany, or in Europe, you don't know what you've got here. I think I live in Cologne at the moment, and I think I've left Cologne something like 50 times. I've counted my German Wings tickets, like the little thing that you get, at least 50 times. And when I ask Germans, they may have done it maybe 5 times or something. You've got such a wonderful place to explore around here. So anyway, that was my goal. I went over there, I spent all my money. I came with $1,000, I'm talking about 20 years ago, longer. I didn't know where I was going. My friend abandoned me. We were in Paris. He said, I'm going to visit my rich uncle in Africa somewhere. And I said, well, stuff you, man. I came to Europe to have a good time. I didn't even know where Greece was. I didn't know where Italy was. We didn't have a map. We didn't have anything. We didn't have email or whatever, iPhones. I just left and I just started walking. I just got the train down to Italy. I went to Brindisi and got the boat. Has anybody been on the boat from southern Italy to Greece or anything like that here? Has anyone had that experience? It's just amazing. You're there in the summer with like 200 people on a boat, partying all the way, 24 hours, sleeping under the stars, and having the time of your life. And that's the sort of thing I'd never ever experienced before. And I thought, I've got to do this for as long as possible. So I got to Greece, to the islands, met a bunch of Australians, hung out with them, spent every cent on beer and partying for like 6 weeks, non-stop. I had no money. I didn't know how to get back to the airport in Paris to get my plane back to Sydney. I had no money at all. So I called my mum. Now, remember, we didn't have Skype or anything like that, right? You go to a little old booth. This was like in 1984 or something. And, Mum, I need some money. I've got to get back home. She said, I told you to save your money before you left. I'm not sending you a cent to get back. You've got to work this out on your own. I said, I can't do that. What am I going to do? So I said, get a job on one of the islands. So I went to a restaurant and I said, can I work here and get some money? And they said, you can wash dishes for a whole day and get $5. I said, okay, I'll start tomorrow. That night I went out and got pissed again, spent every cent, and missed my starting time. So I never went to the job. Anyway, I called home and I begged. I got enough money to get the train from Athens back to Paris, but nothing else. And that was it. A lot of things happened between that day and the time I got back to Paris. But basically, I had to go the last 3 days of my trip back to Paris without eating anything. And I guess that was the real test of a new beginning and looking for a new experience. In a way, you don't ask for it, in a way, subconsciously you ask for something different to happen to you. And I actually went hungry for like 3 days. I didn't eat because I didn't have enough money to buy anything. Now, it's a pretty weird feeling coming from a rich country like Australia, or you guys probably never experienced it. Has any of you ever experienced going hungry at all? Yeah, apart from you, like Latinos from the barrios. Yeah, I mean, from an advanced country I'm talking about, you know, like, I don't think anyone here would be probably crazy enough to not have any savings to do that. I mean, most people travel with savings and they know how much they have, and they account for everything, right? But this is probably the experience that I was looking for. So at some level, I wanted to experience that, to know what it feels like, and it was just amazing. So on the way back, I found that I had a lot of luck meeting people that would help me along the way. I didn't ask for any money. I would feel very embarrassed begging or asking people for money along the way. But I met some very good people, and at every turn, there was always somebody to help you. I met a guy from Africa who had lost his wallet, who had lost his documents, and he was a business guy, and he was going home, and he had some money in his wallet, and he just gave it to me. I had another meal. On the boat back, I met a couple who were an older couple. For me at the time, they were quite an older couple, and they were born-again Christians, and they had a cabin in the boat, and they were so happy as born-again Christians, they just wanted to party the whole night. And they said, you can have our cabin to sleep on tonight. So they gave me the keys to the cabin, and I had somewhere to sleep. And all along the way, I was kind of blessed with all these sort of things that happened to me. And the very last adventure I had, when I finally, after a lot of other things that happened to me, when I made it back to Paris, because my mother actually sent me that money for the train trip, I got back to Paris, but do you know where Charles de Gaulle Airport is in Paris? It's not in the center, right? It's really outside. I didn't have enough money to get the bus ticket from Charles de Gaulle Airport to the airport, from the station to Charles de Gaulle Airport. It's 30 kilometers. So you know what I did? I walked. I walked 30 kilometers. By that time I had a beard this big. I lost all my clothes, my pullover in Greece, partying and everything. And I just asked people in Paris, excuse me, where is the airport? And they went, it's that way. And this is in the middle of Paris. And I just started walking and walking and walking. It took me like 20 hours to walk it, non-stop. When I got about 3 kilometers from the airport, I saw a couple of police, a couple of cops somewhere. So I went up to them and I thought, thank God, I've got some help here. Saviors. So I went up to them, right. They looked at me and they said, show me your passport. Where do you come from? Okay. Once they saw the Australian passport, they felt a little bit safer. They thought I was some Latino guy who just, coming to France or something. And then they threw the passport back at me and they said, okay, on your way. I said, well, like I'm nearly dead, can you take me to the airport? They said, no, it's that way. So I just kept walking, another 3 kilometers. In the end, somebody picked me up, because in France, nobody picks you up. You just, you try to hitchhike forever and no one will pick you up, unless you're a chick, perhaps. So in the end, somebody picked me up for the last kilometer, and I finally made it to the airport, and that was the end of my adventure. And I just crashed at the airport and I slept for like 20 hours or something. I woke up and there was somebody sitting next to me who I spoke to. I told my story, but I didn't ask for anything and they just gave me money. They just gave me $20. Oh, along the way to Paris, I forgot to tell you, on that walk all the way to the airport, I was so hungry, there was a fruit shop on the way with fruit outside. Now, my mother had always told me to be honest and not steal and all that kind of thing. So I took an apple and I didn't want to steal it, so I went into the shop. And I said to the guy, look, I only have Greek drachma, which was the money they had before. And he looked at me and he said, just take the apple. Just take the apple. And I took a bite into that apple, and I don't know, you never know this feeling unless you haven't eaten for like days. Your mouth just does somersaults, You get cramps in your mouth after not having eaten for 2 days. And I'll never forget it. I still remember the taste of that apple. And then I went off to the airport, and that happened, and I woke up the next day. That original friend that I'd gone to Paris with, he met me at the airport because he'd gone to see his rich uncle in Africa. So I was waiting, and I had made a mistake. I had forgotten to confirm my flight to Australia. So I had to be on a list to get back. And the ground hostess said, well, you'll go on a list. And I said, please, I have to get back. I haven't eaten in 3 days, I have no money and whatever. She said, come back at 5 o'clock, I'll call out the people on the list who can go back. I came back, and as she was calling out the list, my friend was behind me, and he tapped me on the shoulder. And that was the guy who went to Africa, and he to see his rich uncle, and he was wearing a brand new leather jacket, had slick hair, he'd been served by 20 servants or something. And I grabbed him and I said, give me $100 now. Just give it to me now, right now. So he gave me money. And as he did that, the ground hostess said, okay, Louis Savali, you've got a flight back to Sydney. Slept like a baby the whole way. And that was the best trip I've ever had and probably will ever have, although I've been around the world twice. Thank you.